Okay, if you are driving right now, you might want to pull over, seriously. Or if you're cooking, put down the knife. Because we have to talk about the news that literally just dropped.
I gotta say, it's a headline I honestly thought we would never, ever see.
Right?
I read it 3 times this morning to make sure it wasn't some sort of parody account.
And the impossible has actually happened. Rush is back.
It feels completely surreal just hearing you say that out loud.
It really does. So, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson have officially announced the 50-something tour kicking off later this year. And, this is huge.
Massive.
But I have to admit, as excited as I am, I'm also really confused.
You're confused why?
Well, just because of the history. I thought the book on Rush was completely closed. Glued shut, actually.
Oh, absolutely.
We had the R40 tour back in 2015, which was heavily billed as the final tour. Yeah, and then, the tragic passing of Neil Peart in 2020. Geddy and Alex have said for years that there is no Rush without Neil. So why now? What changed?
That is the million-dollar question for everyone today. And to understand why this is such a massive shock and why it's so emotional for the fans, we can't just look at today's press release. We really have to look at the context.
Right, because this is not your typical reunion.
Exactly. This isn't just a band getting back together for a quick cash grab. This is a group that has spent over 50 years fighting tooth and nail for creative independence and surviving just unspeakable personal tragedy.
So our mission today for this deep dive isn't just to hype up a tour announcement. We are unpacking that entire 50-year arc. We want to understand the resilience of a band that somehow became one of the biggest cult acts in history and figure out what this 2026 reunion actually represents.
And we've brought a serious stack of sources to help us navigate all this. We are pulling from the fresh press releases about the 50-something tour, of course, but we also dug into archival interviews from You Discover Music and CygnusX1.net, breakdowns of their discography, and some incredibly heavy personal excerpts from Neil Peart's memoirs regarding his journey through grief.
So to do this right, we need to rewind way back. Because to understand how they survived the tragedies of their later years, I feel like you have to look at how they handled failure right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly smooth sailing in the 70s, was it?
Not even close. If you look at 1975, Rush was effectively a dead band walking.
Wow, okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, they had just released their third album, Caress of Steel. And to put it mildly, it was a total disaster commercially.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it sold fewer copies than their previous album.
Yeah.
The tour for it was a nightmare. They were playing these tiny clubs, sometimes to practically empty rooms. They literally joked among themselves, calling it the Down the Tubes tour.
Down the tubes. That is not the sign of a confident rock band.
It was a really dark time, and their record label, Mercury, was furious.
Oh.
They look at this 3-piece hard rock band from Canada that was suddenly experimenting with these long, weird, multi-part song structures, and they just said, this isn't working.
So did the label give them an ultimatum?
Basically, yeah. The message was very clear. Give us a commercial hit, give us a tight radio-friendly single, or you are getting dropped. This is your last chance.
Okay, put yourself in their shoes for a second. You're broke, you're young, the label is breathing down your neck, and the industry experts are all telling you to simplify your sound just to survive. The logical move there is to write a standard 3-minute pop rock song, right?
That is what 99% of bands would have done.
Right.
But Rush, they did the most irrational thing possible. They decided if they were going to go down, they were going down swinging entirely on their own terms.
They just doubled down on the weirdness.
Tripled down. They completely ignored the label's advice to write a hit, and instead they wrote 2112.
Which is just insane. The title track of that album alone is, what, 20 minutes long?
Exactly 20 minutes. It occupies the entire first side of the vinyl record. And it's a massive sci-fi suite set in a totalitarian society run by the priests of the temples of Syrinx.
Right, and I know the basic plot is about a guy finding a guitar, but help me understand the sound. Why was this such a massive middle finger to the record label?
Listen to the structure of it. It starts with this really long, spacey synthesizer overture, then kicks into this heavy, aggressive rock.
Yeah.
But the vocals, when Geddy Lee sings the part of the priests, he is using this screeching, high-pitched, almost abrasive tone, singing, we have assumed control.
Oh, yeah. It's intense.
It's terrifying. It's not radio-friendly at all.
And then the main character finds the guitar, right?
Right. And the music shifts completely. It becomes this gentle, melodic, acoustic strumming. The sources note there's a heavy Pete Townsend influence there from The Who.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the character creates this beautiful art, brings it to the priests, expecting them to be happy, and they just crush him. They destroy the guitar. They tell him it's a total waste of time.
Wow. Okay, I have never actually made that connection before. The priests aren't just generic sci-fi villains. They are the record label executives.
It is a direct allegory. The priests are the suits telling the band their music is garbage. The protagonist is the band trying to share their art. And the story gets incredibly dark. The character falls into despair. Suicide is strongly implied at the end of the suite.
Man, so they hand this 20-minute sci-fi protest song about artistic suicide to the label executives. Those guys must have had a heart attack.
They probably did. But here's the crazy twist. It completely worked.
No way.
2112 hit the Billboard Top 200. It literally saved their career. It cemented their massive status in Canada, and it started building that die-hard cult following in the U.S. It proved to them that sticking to their guns was really the only way forward.
That moment absolutely defined them, didn't it? That attitude of, we do what we want, but obviously they couldn't keep writing 20-minute songs forever if they wanted to grow.
No, and that is where the next phase of their resilience comes in, which is adaptability. The late 70s saw them transition a bit. Albums like Hemispheres push that long-form complexity to the absolute breaking point. But by the time we get to 1980 with Permanent Waves, and especially 1981 with Moving Pictures, they figured out this incredible magic trick.
What was the trick?
They learned how to be mind-bogglingly complex and insanely catchy at the exact same time. They took that high-level musicianship and packaged it into 4- and 5-minute songs that could actually get played on the radio.
So now we are talking about the blockbuster era. Songs like Tom Sawyer, Limelight.
Tom Sawyer's the perfect example. If you actually try to tap your foot to that song, you're going to trip over yourself.
Really? Why is that? It always just feels like a huge driving rock anthem to me.
It definitely is an anthem, but the time signature is all over the place. A normal rock song is in 44 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very steady. In Tom Sawyer, there are dropping beats shifting into 78 time. It's essentially math rock. But because of the way Neil Peart drives the groove on the drums, it doesn't feel academic or stiff. It feels incredibly heavy.
And speaking of Neil, I've always heard this rumor about the instrumental track YYZ from that album. People say the rhythm in the intro isn't just random, that it's actually some kind of code.
Is literal Morse code.
Seriously?
Yes, YYZ is the airport identifier for Toronto Pearson International Airport. The rhythm Neil plays on the ride cymbal bell right at the start, dash dot dash dash, is the actual Morse code for the letters YYZ.
That is such a beautifully nerdy detail. I absolutely love it.
It's amazing. And musically, it's brilliant because it uses a tritone, which is often called the devil's interval. It creates this immediate musical tension that just pulls you right in. That is the genius of that specific era. They were recording at Les Studio in Morin Heights, getting this pristine production quality and taking these high-concept intellectual ideas, but executing them with pure rock and roll energy.
And the chemistry between the three of them, I mean, you can hear it so clearly. You have Alex Lifeson filling up so much sonic space with just one guitar, then Geddy Lee playing bass and keyboards and singing all at once.
Playing bass pedals with his feet.
Right, playing with his feet. It's wild. And then Neil, who the fans called the professor, writing these lyrics that weren't just your standard rock cliches.
Right, he wasn't writing about partying. Neil took over lyric writing back in 1974. And he brought this intellectual weight that really grounded the band.
The sources mention some political philosophy in his early writing too, right?
Yeah, the You Discover Music pieces note he was heavily influenced by Ayn Rand early on. And just to be clear, we are just imparting what the source material says here, not taking any stance on the politics. But her writings were clearly the basis for the intense individualism you see in 2112.
Okay, that makes sense given the whole individual versus the collective theme in that song.
Exactly. But it's interesting because by the 80s and 90s, his lyrics really shifted away from that and moved much more toward humanism, empathy, and just exploring the shared human condition.
Which really makes what happened next so incredibly painful to talk about. By the late 90s, they were at the absolute top of their game. They had nothing left to prove. And then the bottom just fell out.
Yeah. This is where the story shifts from a triumphant rock biography into a devastating tragedy. We jump to the late 90s. The band had just finished the Test for Echo tour.
And in August 1997, tragedy struck.
Neil Peart's daughter, Selena, died in a very sudden car accident. She was only 19 years old.
God, I can't even imagine.
It completely destroyed him. But then it gets worse. Less than a year later, in June 1998, Neil's wife, Jackie, passed away from cancer. Neil actually wrote later in his memoirs that she essentially died of a broken heart.
So in the span of 10 months, he lost his only child and his wife. He lost his entire family.
He was completely shattered, understandably. At his wife's funeral, he looked at Geddy and Alex and told them, "Consider me retired." And he meant it.
What do you even do with that kind of grief? As a person, how do you even wake up in the morning?
He ran. Neil got on his BMW motorcycle and just left. He became what he called a ghostwriter. He actually wrote a book with that title, detailing the whole journey, which is where we pull some of this from. He rode 55,000 miles across North and Central America.
55,000 miles just riding.
Just riding. He was trying to outrun the grief. He described himself as a ghost, just sort of observing the world moving around him, trying to figure out who he was now that the titles of father and husband had been violently stripped away from him.
And what were Geddy and Alex doing during all this time?
See, this is the part of the story that always gets me. They waited.
They didn't try to replace him?
No. They didn't hold auditions for a new drummer. They didn't pressure him to come back to the studio or fulfill any contracts. They just gave their friend the space he needed to survive. For 5 full years, the band Rush simply didn't exist.
That really speaks to what you said earlier about this being so much more than a business arrangement.
It was a true brotherhood, and when Neil finally felt ready to return, which led to the Vapor Trails album in 2002, it wasn't just a band reuniting. For the fans and for them, it was a resurrection. Everyone understood that. Every single show after 2002 felt like a miraculous bonus round that nobody was supposed to get.
But time is the one thing you really can't fight forever, no matter how resilient you are. Which brings us to the long goodbye. The R40 tour in 2015.
Right. Now, publicly, this was marketed as the 40th anniversary tour. But behind the scenes, everyone in their camp knew this was the end of the road.
Why stop then, though? They were still playing incredibly well and selling out massive arenas.
It all came down to Neil's physical integrity. The sources reveal he was suffering from chronic physical issues, tendinitis, and specifically a terrible foot infection that made just walking painful, let alone drumming.
Ouch.
And you have to understand, drumming for Rush isn't like keeping a simple beat for a blues band. It is an athletic feat. It's a 3-hour marathon sprint every night.
So he was playing those complex math rock beats in immense physical pain.
Immense pain. And Neil had an incredibly high standard for himself. He didn't want to be the aging rock star who couldn't hit the notes anymore. He wanted to go out while he was still the absolute best in the world at what he did.
Geddy and Alex wanted to keep going, though, right?
They did. They really wanted to take the R40 tour to Europe and the UK because they had a huge fan base there. But they respected Neil's physical limits. Once again, they chose their friendship over the business and the tour dates. So the final show was in Los Angeles, August 2015. Neil walked to the front of the stage at the end, something he almost never did. He took a bow with his brothers, and that was it.
And then came the silence. We all knew he was retired, but the public didn't know he was sick again until the news broke in January 2020 that he had passed away from glioblastoma.
Brain cancer, yeah. He had fought it privately for 3 years. It was an absolute shock to the entire world. And with his death, it felt like the holy triumvirate, as the fans called them, was broken forever.
Which brings us all the way back to the present day. Tuesday, February 24, 2026, the announcement of the 50-something tour.
50-something. I just love that name.
It's great.
It acknowledges the history, the 50-plus years since the beginning, but it's also wonderfully self-deprecating. Like, yeah, we're 50-something years into this whole thing.
Let's look at the details we have. The tour starts this June in Los Angeles.
Which is so fitting. Picking up exactly where the R40 tour ended is a direct acknowledgement of the exact spot where they said goodbye.
And the press release explicitly states the purpose of the tour is to honor Neil Peart. But, and I know every single person listening to this is screaming this at their device right now who is playing the drums.
That is the big mystery of the day. The official sources do not confirm a specific drummer's name yet. Now, Geddy has mentioned in past interviews that he really admired Anika Nels, who was a phenomenal drummer, but nothing is official on that front. However, we do know about another major addition to the lineup.
Right, they've added veteran keyboardist Lauren Gold.
Which is brilliant and very smart move. It signals right out of the gate that they aren't trying to just replicate the classic trio. By bringing in a dedicated keyboardist, it takes a ton of the multitasking pressure off Geddy Lee.
Oh, totally.
It allows him to just focus on playing the bass and singing. And symbolically, it maybe makes the physical hole that Neil left slightly less glaring on stage.
It changes the entire dynamic of the performance.
Exactly. It's an admission that things are different now.
You know, reading the quotes from Geddy and Alex today, this does not sound like it was an easy decision for them. They mentioned it's the first time they were really talking about it out loud.
For a very long time, the grief was just too fresh. Playing those specific songs without Neil behind them probably felt wrong, almost disrespectful to his memory. But I think enough time has passed, it's been 6 years since his death, that the feeling has finally shifted for them. It's moved from pure grief into celebration.
It almost feels like a wake, but a really joyous one.
That's a great way to put it. It's a necessary collective ritual. Think about all those fans in Europe or South America who never got that R40 farewell because the tour stayed in North America. This is a chance for everyone to gather, to say goodbye properly, and just to say thank you.
And to hear those iconic songs live one more time. Because at the end of the day, the spirit of radio, subdivisions, closer to the heart, these songs mean so much to people's lives.
There is absolutely no substitute for hearing them played live by the people who actually wrote them. The energy in those arenas this summer is going to be indescribable. Just tears and furious air drumming everywhere you look.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, when we look at this entire arc, from them starting as a little basement band called The Projection way back in 1968 to the massive fight with the label for 2112, the unspeakable tragedy of the late 90s, and now this defiant return in 2026, what is the real lesson we take away from all this?
For me, it's that Rush represents the ultimate triumph of technical proficiency and deep friendship over commercial pressure and personal despair.
Friendship really seems to be the glue holding that entire 50-year arc together.
Absolutely. They stuck together when the label wanted to fire them. They stuck together when tragedy struck and just waited 5 years for their drummer to heal. And they stopped touring entirely when their friend physically couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And now they are finally coming back to honor him.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to chew on regarding legacy, doesn't it?
It really does. It forces you to ask, what actually makes a band? Is it the specific magical combination of the people in the room? Or is it the music itself?
Usually the instinct is to say it's the people. You know, no Rush without Neil.
And historically, that was completely true. But this new 50-something tour suggests that maybe the music has finally transcended the players. The music has become this living, breathing thing shared between the band and the audience. This upcoming tour isn't just for Geddy and Alex. It's for the community that kept that music alive through all the dark years.
The drummer is gone, but the beat goes on.
Precisely.
Well, I know exactly where I'll be this June, probably crying in the stands in Los Angeles.
I'll make sure to save you a seat.
That does it for our deep dive on the resilience of Rush and this massive breaking news. Whether you've been a fan since 2112 or you're just discovering their music today, thanks for joining us on this journey.
Take care, everyone.